Hello and welcome to the Coaching Podcast, Coaching for Success in Sport and Business. Your host is Emma Doyle, the energy and high performance under pressure coach who is a world leader in unleashing human potential. Buckle up for this high octane session. Let them have it, coach.
G'day everybody and welcome to the Coaching Podcast. I have the pleasure today of interviewing Ryan Lavarnway, who's a keynote speaker, resilient coach, former Major League Baseball catcher. Now you are the first baseball personnel that I have on the podcast. So I can't wait to ask you so many questions about especially being a catcher. I'm super fascinated in that. But obviously, you also have won a World Series, and I've seen the ring. It's true. He did win a World Series, Boston Red Sox. He's an Olympian, and he's a proud girl dad. That was a tongue twister to kick us off. So, look, I always go with a pattern break question, Ryan. Obviously, welcome to the show. And if baseball was a shape, what shape would it be?
Interesting. First of all, hi. Thanks for having me. Love it. Love the good day at the beginning. If baseball was a shape, it would probably be a circle.
Tell me more.
Baseball. So we talk about how hitting a baseball is the hardest thing to do in all sports. And that's because you hit a round ball with a round bat and people are throwing it at you as hard as they can and it's moving every which way. So I think the round bat, the round ball, circle.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. That could be a great metaphor for so many things that we're probably going to talk about. And with the French Open tennis tournament started yesterday, for those of you that I've got a lot of tennis lovers in my audience here. And for the first time ever, one of the coaches started signaling. So coaching is now legal at the Grand Slam level. It never used to be. But when the coach was down the opposite end yesterday, for the first time, we actually had signaling, serving it out wide, serving it down the tee, serving it down the middle, simple signals. And the commentator said, well, if this was baseball, there'd be 7 people down the other end of the court telling the player where they're going to serve, right? So this was the first time I've ever seen signals. I want to go there first. I want to go to who let's start basic, okay? Because I went to MTSU and I had a great time with my baseball buddies there. And that was the first time I'd seen the signals as well. So talk to me about who comes. Is it the pitcher that signals to you or the catcher determines the signal? And I want to know, like, how do you learn that as a kid? Do you start basic? Yeah, take that anywhere you want.
Well, so it's not the first time we've seen signaling in tennis. I think the rule change probably stemmed from Serena Williams' coach a few years ago. Remember, this was a big controversy.
Yeah.
He scratched his face or did something with his hands, and she got penalized for being coached, and she argued that he wasn't actually coaching. So I think that was the impetus for the rule change. But as far as in baseball, it's very parallel to the real world, to the corporate space, which is, I always try to make that parallel because realistically, most of your listeners, your viewers, aren't ever going to play in the highest competition of sports.
Correct.
But most people have a parallel in the real world and in the corporate environment. So in baseball, the biggest thing you have to realize is that everybody has their role and everybody plays their role. So the coaches from the dugout are often signaling bigger picture plays. They're signaling whether you should pick off the runner or game control signs, which base should you throw to if the runner steals, whether the infield should be in to play it, to get the play at the plate or back, whether the outfielders need to move right or left, play shift. And then the catcher signals to the pitcher, hey, I think this is the pitch you should throw next. They're making suggestions, right? But then the pitcher is the one that ultimately has the ball, that decides what pitch to throw, starts the action. So they get the ultimate decision. So there's big like orchestration type signs, then there's suggestions on the next move signs, and then there's the decision maker. And when everybody plays their role really well and they communicate back and forth, that's when the game really goes smooth. And that's the same in the corporate space, right? You have the CEO is the big decision maker, but he's not actually the implementer. Then you have the bosses, the managers that are making suggestions, and then you have the people that are actually doing the work. When everybody plays their role to the best of their ability, that's when the team goes.
Absolutely. So good already. Decision making is practice one in my book, What Makes a Great Coach. And empowering decision making in the moment, I think, is such a critical skill that sometimes is lost, both in, again, you and I work in corporate and we have this background in sports. So talk to me about when you were growing up. I want to know, just take me back and talk to me about the role that decision making played. Is that something where the coaches allowed you to have some freedom there, or did they tell you what decisions you had to make? Talk to me about the young you, and was baseball your chosen sport? Talk to me about, little
Yeah,
Ryan.
baseball was always my chosen sport, and actually the catcher position was always my chosen position, except for in high school when I wasn't good enough to play that position. I had to go somewhere else, so I came back to it. But in Little League, I was always empowered to call my own game, right? Call pitches, make suggestions, learn through failure, learn through experience. In today's youth sports game, I feel like a lot of coaches are taking the reins there and calling pitches from the dugout, and I think it's a disservice to the athletes, because you need to learn through doing, through failing, through experiencing, and you're going to learn at such a deeper level. When I was in high school, I didn't catch because I wasn't good enough at the time versus my peers. But I think that coach did call pitches from the dugout, which was a disservice. And then in college, I went back to catching, and I had my own decision-making power. There's actually a story I want to share that I don't really share this because it's not relevant most of the time. But when I was in college, we were practicing bunt defense. And if you're not a big baseball fan, a bunt is when you just hold the bat, you let the ball hit it, and it goes very short. It's mostly a sacrifice of yourself and you're out type of play. But when you're defending it, the catcher's role as commander on the field, quarterback on the field, who can see the whole play, your role is highlighted because you need to help direct the fielders which base to throw it to based on, is that base covered by a defender? Do you have a chance to get that runner out, or should you just take the easy out at first versus going for the more aggressive play? And in practices in college, especially early on, I had a hard time making that decision and really being decisive and vocal about the decision. And the thing that really helped me was my coach would say, you have to make a decision. The wrong decision is still better than no decision.
Yep.
Because these players don't know where to throw it. If you don't direct them, the whole play might blow up and we might lose the game because your inability to just make a call. So the parallel there, I mean, it's obvious, right? It's right there. Make a decision, even if it's not the right one, because indecision is the worst action.
Absolutely. The clarity paradox, I call it. You're better off taking massive action in any direction than doing nothing. That's a great story. And shout out to some of your early coaches then, because this is one of the reasons I run the podcast. I mean, it wasn't until I actually stepped out of tennis that I learnt about how to ask curious questions and how to empower decision making in young people, so that then whether they then step into the corporate life or their work life or their entrepreneur life, you have to be able to make decisions in the moment. So that's huge. Thank you for sharing that. Let's go to resilience. I know that you call yourself a resilience coach, and we have had a number of great episodes about psychological flexibility. And obviously, I'm a huge Ted Lasso girl, so be a goldfish, the 10-second memory. Talk to me about your definition of resilience, and how did your background in baseball impact your definition and how you teach it in the corporate world these days?
So, I mean, resilience is everything to me. I think you need it, and you don't only need it when you face adversity. You need it to get to your best. If things are going well, you need it to keep going well, right? Resilience is not something you wait to need. You build it before you need it so that it's there. And I really believe that the first 95% of any journey, the last 5% takes as much effort as the first 95%. So high achievers, people that are already successful, need resilience as much or more than anybody else. And in my journey, I learned it along the way, right? I learned it when I won the national batting title in college and I was All-American and I was top 10 for Player of the Year. That's when I needed resilience more than anything, because I was like, how am I supposed to do that again?
Yeah, back it up.
How can I stick to this standard and be better than I was when I was already the best that ever was?
So true. I absolutely love that.
I made it to the big leagues and I performed really well. My dreams came true. My family was there. I made a bunch of money. Everyone's so happy. And then I got sent back down to the minor leagues.
Mm.
And I actually got added to the roster, taken off the roster, released, sent down, traded. I've been taken off of a major league roster more than anyone else in the history of baseball. So most of my professional success came after these failures. And even the way you frame the failure, if I've been taken off of a major league roster more than anyone else, that means I've also been added to a major league roster more than anyone else. So I've succeeded as much as anyone else in history too from that lens. It's all about what you do before you need it and how you can respond when you need it.
Mm. Brilliant. And I'm going to push you even more on this topic because it's so useful, I believe, for our listeners out there. What does leaning into possibility look like on a bad day? I guess it's along the same lines of what we just spoke about. But you talk about resilience, you talk about mindset, leaning into possibility. You know, someone's listening to this and saying, yeah, well, things are shitty right now. I'm really struggling. But how? Like, how do you do that?
Well, I've kind of developed my why not framework, and it starts with understanding your why, right? Like we've all heard that Simon Sinek, you need to start with why, but you need a why that withstands the hard times, right? It's not just any why, it's deeper than that. It's what is going to keep you going that matters to you, even if it doesn't make sense to anybody else.
Mm.
Then you need to hardwire your habits, right? Tiny actions that are done daily, not when it's easy, but especially when it's not easy. Your habits will define your actions.
Mm.
And then when things get tough, you get to define the reframe, right? Every time I was sent down from the major leagues, I had the opportunity to go work on something where there was less people watching. I had the opportunity to get better. I had the opportunity to find new ways to improve where there was less people watching, right? If I got injured, I had time to reset and work on my mindset or work on the other parts of my body. There's always an opportunity when you reframe the hard times, right? There's always that flip side of the coin. The hard part is seeing it. The hard part is valuing that other side.
Mm. And it is, I think, I teach reframing in my Leader as Coach Vistage workshop, and it's amazing. Even people at the top of their game find reframing a struggle because they're like, well, just get on with it, or just get over yourself, and or just, you know. But at the end of the day, people need what I call even conversation frameworks to help them reframe, because as we know, we have to be obsessed with the why. Like, what's our why as you said, to keep going, even if it only makes sense to you. And when things are going badly, if we keep asking ourselves, why me? Why does this keep happening to me? Of course, we slip into sometimes that victim mentality. What are your thoughts on that?
That you're leading me right to where I'm going for this anyway, is you start with the why, but I want you to end with why not. And the not part of my framework, the N, you need to normalize neutral, right? You need to normalize rest and recovery. You need to normalize that this is not something you go to only when you need it, but you need to get to your neutral mindset, your neutral rest, rehabilitation on purpose. Get yourself to that neutral place and then own the outcome. You're not going to be able to be responsible for every success, every piece of success, or every piece of failure. But when you own your piece in the success or the failure, then you can own your process. You can own the next success. You can own the next step to get there.
Yep.
And then trust yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Trust is huge, isn't it? All right. At this point, I'll ask you our holy grail question, which is in 1 to a maximum of 3 words. What do you think makes a great coach?
Empowerment.
Now you can expand.
The best coaches hold you to a high standard, but also offer a high level of support.
Yeah.
And I think often the best coaches don't need to coach as much as they set the environment and they set the standard so that the environment coaches you and you hold yourself to the standard, and they support you and believe in you and make you feel like you can be better than you thought you were.
Love that. And as a catcher, you led from behind the plate, so to speak, metaphorically. So what leadership lessons did you take or do you take into the corporate world today from that perspective of, you mentioned, you said before, commander, right? You're the catcher. You're the one that can also, I love that, even the visual of the catcher, the perspective, you get to see everything. Correct me if I'm wrong. I've never been a catcher, but if I was to be one, that's how I would see it. So yeah, talk to me about some of the things and talk about your workshop that you do with Vistage as well. Give me your 2 minutes.
So a workshop, you asked about the catcher perspective. I hosted a keynote, or I was the opening keynote of a conference last week where the topic was lead like a catcher, because oftentimes the catcher is doing support. The catcher is the hardest worker on the field. The catcher's job responsibility is the highest, and they can get the least credit, and that's okay. I had a coach. I played for the Atlanta Braves, and I got traded there in the middle of the season. I was really excited to make a first impression. And after the game, we won. I played a good game. After the game, my coach's first quote to the media was, "The best compliment I can give Ryan today is that I didn't notice him." Because when you're watching baseball on TV, if the catcher catches the ball, that's what he was supposed to do. He blocks the ball, that's what he was supposed to do. He makes the right pitch calls. The pitcher gets the credit for the good performance. You didn't notice the catcher. And that's okay, right? You take a quiet pride in setting the people up around you for success. You don't need the credit.
Love that. Love that. And what's your Vistage workshop? What's your title that you talk on?
So one of the things, once I got out of baseball, I partnered with a woman in Denver who is brilliant. Her name's Jackie, and she has been a CEO coach, an executive coach for almost 30 years. She created a program called Spark Brilliance, and it is from the psychological perspective of teaching people how to benefit from the way human beings act, react, and interact, right? So we're hoping to offer leaders leadership training for what's now and what's next. And everybody right now is facing struggles. Everybody is worried about the economy or AI or tariffs or something. There's transformation happening. Companies are growing, companies are fading. We are trying to offer leaders what they need now to de-risk transition.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And what would you say that great teams share in common? And how did the coach manage, like, think about the great teams that you've been on. I know you've had a lot, right, of different experience as well. And I'm assuming different coaches along the way, but what's the one thing they have in common, and how did the great coaches manage that?
Great coaches set the expectation for the culture, and then the players themselves implement it, and the players themselves police it. Because if it's always coming from the coach, if it's a police state, that's not going to be beneficial. But the individual players need to buy in and lead from that perspective themselves.
Yep. Did you ever have a pitcher who you would suggest a type of pitch and they were like, nope, nope, nope?
Yeah.
How did you deal with that?
Well, ultimately, it came down to understanding my role. Right. There was a specific pitcher, Clay Buchholz. I'll name names. That's okay. He would shake off every pitch I called, even if I called the pitch he wanted, because then he'd say, well, I'm trying to mess with the batter's head by shaking and not just saying yes, because you calling the right pitch was so obvious that now he knows it's coming. So he shook almost every single pitch. And sometimes I'd have to go through 7 or 8 options to get back to the first one I offered.
Wow.
But by knowing my role is to make suggestions, to help him feel confident, to get him to where he needs to be. So you got to let him. You got to let him do what he thinks he needs to do, and then have conversations later to try to guide the ship. But I couldn't try to make him do it my way. That wasn't ever going to be successful.
I'm learning so much about the role of the catcher today. This is super awesome because of the transfer over. There's so many beautiful lessons. You know, as a former tennis coach, I used to say my number one role is to make myself redundant. And people used to look at me like I was crazy. I'm like, yeah, like if I've given them the skills to think about the game plan and execute the game plan, and then, you know, essentially I don't need to be the one there the whole time because I've empowered this decision making and this ability where I make myself redundant. As an entrepreneur, it was maybe not my best financial thinking, but the concept of what you're talking about is so impactful for leaders around letting go of the way that you think is 100% it needs to be done this way. It's a control piece versus an influence piece. And the other word that I love, you talk about the environment, creating that environment. So this might be a nice segue for you to, you're also a published author. Could you tell us about your 2 books and maybe 1 or 2 of the lessons within them?
Yes. So one of my books is a kid's book, and that's really just to inspire kids to go after their dreams and find their community. My other book right now is a journal. I'm using my author copy that I had got published that says "not for resale" right on the front. To
Awesome.
me, I was always into having a coach myself, and especially mindset coaches, because if you're right between your ears, then you can finally let your performance, what your body can do, can come out. Whereas if you're not right up here first, then it doesn't matter how good you are physically. I built this journal, the Why Not Journal, with the best exercises that helped me in my mindset journey and in my baseball career, because journaling was a big part of getting me to where I got. And I wanted to share that with other people.
Yeah. And what do you think about kids today being on their phone? What do you think about the handwritten journaling versus the texting or the voice recording? Do you have a thought on that?
Yeah,
You don't mind?
I'm sure there's research on it on how handwriting can be more impactful. I can't quote it properly. I like having a physical tool. Plus, it's a physical reminder of I put my phone and my keys and my wallet on it, and then when I go to grab my phone and my keys, I'm like, oh, have I journaled yet today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of journaling. You're right. There's a lot of great research out there about the mind, the hand, and the physical connection of writing it down. And I think it's always better out than in. I always say, otherwise it plays out unresourcefully, doesn't it? When we don't deal with the elephant in the room, so to speak. All right, the girl dad. My TED Talk is called Unleashing Female Potential, and it's all about empowering and strengthening the inner voice of teenage girls. Obviously, it's very useful for everybody out there, not just people that only work with teenage girls, but it was based on my years of experience and this whole concept of when I would say, what's your greatest strength? They struggled to articulate it, or they'd look to mum or dad or coach to explain to me what their strengths were. So it was based on how do we strengthen that inner voice within the girls. And the other concept within it was about future-based thinking. So if you throw next time in front of anything, it's way better than focusing on what you did wrong and unpacking that, because girls are super smart and half the time they know what they did wrong. Even I'm sure for your little one at a young age, hey, next time it could be as simple as, where do we put the plate after dinner? Next time, what are we going to do differently if somebody says this in this situation? So what are your thoughts around raising girls?
Man, I'm still figuring it out. My daughter is almost 3 at this point, so she's very much a toddler. But as a new parent, I'm trying to find all the Instagram handles of child psychologists and like, how do you deal with tantrums? How do you build self-confidence? And tie that into what I know about growth mindset and what I know about self-worth and building resilience, and just really talk to her and value and show that I value the things that are going to help her later.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a parent, I struggle to want to do things for her versus figure out when it's okay to let her fail and struggle through something, because that's something she's going to need to do. Or good job, like you got the results we wanted, versus you tried really hard, right? Value the effort versus the success. I'm actually working with a man right now who illustrated my children's book, and we're creating a resilience themed coloring book. And I hope to have it out there for people in a month or so. But every letter of the alphabet will have a resilience mindset sentence with something they can color on, just to start and to facilitate the conversation, right? It's like, I can pull one of these up, because I think it's so important to start talking about it at an early age. Let's see. Lainey the lifeguard learns from every wave. Mina the nurse never gives up on helping others, right? Like every letter will have some form of resilience phrase, and just really start the conversation, because the sooner you start it, the more ingrained it will be.
Absolutely. So parents out there, one of my favorite quotes is that we are all unique experiments of one. And while we can't put someone in a box, same in the corporate world, same with parenting. I always say that the parenting, and I'm an auntie, of course, I'm not a parent, but the family advice and the love life advice is free, but the workplace stuff you got to pay for, ladies and gentlemen. All right, let me land this episode and just really summarize of course, keep asking ourselves the why and why not. I love that. The reframe, hardwire those habits. That extra 5% at the end is where we need to build on our resilience the most. We lead from behind the plate and we empower others through the decision making. So much so that they don't even know that we were there, because we're doing our job. We don't need the accolades. So to land the episode, 2 questions. What does having that World Series ring really mean to you? A, and B, what's your final top 3 tips out there for leaders for the future?
What does having the ring mean to me? To me, it's a physical, tangible reminder that I accomplished all my dreams, and you can too, right? When I am by myself, I don't wear the ring. It sits in a sunglass case on a bookshelf gathering dust. Where it gets some action is when I can share it with other people, to be an example that things are possible. Amazing things are possible. And whenever I speak, I always highlight my weaknesses. I highlight my humanness, because if I can accomplish my dreams, so can you. You talk about, a takeaway. That's it.
Yeah.
Let me be an example of what's possible. And if you're a leader, lead from that perspective. Empower people to believe they can, and they will.
Yeah. Create that environment for everyone to step into their best self. Ryan, we met through the Vistage Speaker Appreciation Day. So shout out to all the Vistage chairs in Colorado. I'm so grateful for that day, for these types of connections. And I can't wait to continue to follow your growth as a leader, as a coach, and step into our greatness, because we keep learning every day. So, you were very vulnerable as well in your reframing. So I love it. Lead like a catcher, everybody. That's definitely going to be a through line, maybe even a title of this episode. Take care. And Ryan, thank you for being on the Coaching Podcast.
Thanks, Al.
Appreciate you all. Take care. Thanks for listening.
The Coaching Podcast is sponsored by Transition Coach for Athletes, a global coaching, mentoring, and U.S. college sporting scholarship placement service. The service helps athletes navigate the often challenging world of choosing your best college fit while maximizing sports performance. Visit www.transitioncoachforathletes.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating review on your podcast listening device. And don't forget to tell a fellow coach about the show. The ball is in your court to take action and enjoy your coaching.